It's a long time since I've been at Muresk. I finished here 30 years ago, and it's probably the last time I publicly spoke, so tiny bit of sympathy if I lose my way. Before I crack into it, I'd like to thank the Minister for coming along, and I agree 100% with the comments on understanding how long it takes to actually research the soil and get a result to know what systems are working the best. And if I may, back in 2008 I was involved in the Lower Grower Group network, and at that time the Department of Ag started a study called Improving Soil Health in West Australian Farming Systems, and it was headed up by Dr. Daniel Murphy, Dr. Yoshi Sawada from the UWA, and from the department we had Dr. Andrew Werrett and Dr. Francis Hoyle. And this study was fantastic because they started to benchmark throughout the whole of WA the different things, your water holding capacity, soil carbon, and all the different levels. And the study was done in 2008, everything was GPS'd. They came back in 2012 and did it all, and then the government changed. And my plea to the Minister and the Department would be to reinvigorate that, because some of us have been, and not just me, there's all through WA, you've got different families making massive efforts on their farms to try and change things. And by reinvigorating that, our benchmark is 2008. We don't want to benchmark in 2020-21. We've got a benchmark in 2008, and it may be a great opportunity for us to see how different systems have improved or not improved in that 12-year period. So, yeah, that's my plea before we get into what I've got to say. Thank you. I left Muresk, and the one thing Muresk gave me was the opportunity to challenge traditional thinking and do a bit of research for myself rather than just taking on board what conventional agronomists said. So 15 years ago we started our road to what we're doing now. So I farm with my wife, son and father. We've got 5,200 arable hectares, 30 k's south of Coolum. We used to be in the medium rainfall environment. We're probably in the low rainfall environment now, but we manage with what we've got. We grow barley and oats now. We used to grow wheat. We had to get out of that because we lost too much from frost. We've changed back to a 45% roughly sheep business, and the flock is 2/3 maternal composite ewes crossed to white Suffolks, weaning 163%, and the balance of the third are merinos touching on 125%. So our focus is not on massive high stock densities, it's on fertility and using the grain feed at the time of the year that we've got it. What does sustainable farming mean to me? Sustainability has to be sustainable for my family. So we all want to have a nice house, a nice car, and the kids to go to nice schools. So if you can't achieve that, well, it's not sustainable. It's got to be sustainable for our soil. So we need to be able to produce the same or more with less. It's not much good changing your system if you can't produce what you traditionally could. It's got to be sustainable for our bank account, and it's got to be sustainable for our community. And look, the footy club and the CWA, as important as they are, if you're doing the above things, that'll come along. But the biggest concern that I think we've got to cover in the next few years for the farming community is that the backlash from the carbon story could be, live export times 10. When I was at Muresk here, there was hardly any talk on biological farming, and nowadays Twitter, social media, the news is full of regen ag and carbon footprint, whether you like it or not. To make all these things work, I think there's only one thing that I've concentrated on, and that's water holding capacity. So sustainability, is it, I heard Keith say to me when he came out to visit me at the farm, it's the holy grail of dryland broad ag. Is it even achievable? Well, the alternative to sustainability is not really appealing to me, so we started our road 15 years ago. I prefer not to have too strong an opinion on climate change, however I'm very passionate for caring about our soil. I believe if we concentrate on growing roots with soluble calcium, we will improve our soil organic matter and hence our labile carbon. So that's the key to what we've been trying to do, and thereby reduce our reliance on excess synthetic fertiliser, and by doing this not produce as large a carbon footprint in the first place. So we're still using traditional fertilisers, we just cut them back to 20% of what we would have been. This, in my opinion, is much more sustainable than loading up a crop with excess synthetic fertiliser, then purchasing carbon offsets and selling produce as carbon neutral. I don't really think that's the future, which seems to be the way some big ag and publicly listed companies are going. I think concentrating on our water holding capacity on farm is the key. Not to be confused with just water conserving measures such as summer sprays, cover crops and good weed management. They are all important, however the goal is to make the sponge bigger. It doesn't matter how good your weed control is if your soil is non-wetting. If a soil has lost 1% soil organic matter, that's equivalent to 146 tonnes of water storage per hectare, or about 15 millimetres. What's 15 millimetres worth to your business on the 15th of September? I'm guessing hundreds of thousands for many broadacre farmers. I find it interesting that some big names in ag are bagging the carbon footprint debate, because in my opinion, if we're not improving our water holding capacity, then our farming businesses will suffer in dry seasons. Essentially, the reason I do it is competitive advantage will exist with higher water holding capacity, and the rest just follows along. If a farmer continues to use high rates of synthetic fertilisers and continues the downward spiral of soil organic matter, and hence the loss of their water holding capacity, the margin for error in a tight season gets smaller and smaller until it is impossible to make a living off that country. So, we already heard Steve mention soil organic matter is below 1%, well, then you're in trouble. So, philosophy, well, we all can get caught up in the story, and I probably did for a couple of years there, but the change of a particular farming system to regen, sustainable, biological, or what you may like to call it, can be fraught with danger. Becoming too philosophical may not make you money. Feeling good won't put food on the table. The complete abuse of the word sustainable by many corporates is also an issue for me personally. Keep your approach to change practical and outcome focused. My goal is to produce as much as I can with the least amount of synthetic inputs while leaving the soil and the farm in the best possible condition. To make this work, once again, the water holding capacity is crucial. For this to occur, we've focused on soluble calcium with the simple message that roots fix dirt. We have been using a hybrid model, being low rates of conventional fertilisers combined with the Australian Soil Planners farming system for 15 years. The ASP system has focused on soil health and remediation of chemical and fertiliser use from our conventional inputs. So our system. Our farm is typically lighter soils. In more recent years we've moved to a higher percentage of grazing, which is currently at 45%. I found a high percentage cropping system expensive and very reliant on more expensive chemical and fertiliser regime. To bring the cropping paddocks and recently purchased land back into a pasture rotation, we've used the synergies of establishing tillage radish and subclover together. This has several benefits: tillage radish for opening up the soil and recycling of nutrients, an early feed from the tillage radish, and subclover for the spring feed and organic N. This planting also allows for grass control with selective. Since we've adopted this system, most of our crops grown on our home farm and country that we've had for a little bit longer, our total in-crop N use these days is 9 to 11 units, and our P is at approximately 5 units, which we're talking considerably smaller numbers than our peers. So we started out playing around with tillage radish a few years ago, and they seemed a bit crazy at the start, but the synergies with tillage radish and clover have just been phenomenal. You've got the recycling massive amounts of N, K, and also you're improving your soil structure and infiltration. And we're seeing it in the following crops with their ability to stay greener longer and survive a harsher environment. Yeah, it's been quite an eye-opener actually, just playing around with something like that. It's such a win-win. Rather than getting a tractor out and spending fortunes on diesel, you plant a crop and get the value with your livestock, and then the synergies with your organic N in the following years. What we've focused on, we've been working on having an improved and softer rotation, reducing the most harmful inputs, reducing the use of synthetic fertilisers, increasing our naturally occurring nitrogen cycle, increasing root growth of all the plants we grow, improving the nutrient density of the pastures we grow, and producing more resilient crops. So, we want to increase functional carbon. I'm not quite focused on selling the carbon, but to do the following. I'm here for today, and I'm a farmer, and I'm not so worried about what publicly listed companies are doing with carbon. I do it because we want to improve our water holding capacity, improve nutrient holding capacity. Sorry for looking at the board. To improve the soil structure, to improve microbial populations, and to improve the naturally occurring nitrogen cycle. Growing more roots, I think I've mentioned that a few times now, increases the volume of our soil the plants have access to, increasing water and nutrient availability, increases microbial activity by increasing the rhizosphere, and increasing root mass increases our labile carbon. This photo was taken earlier on this season, but sub 180 mils for the growing season, and yeah, I think we used about 11 units of N, and the oat crop managed to yield 2.65 tonnes. So for a tough season, it was not a bad result. How do we grow more roots? We use soluble calcium both in furrow and in crop. We cannot have root growth or cell density without plant available soluble calcium. We seed dress our seed prior to planting with a seed dressing that stimulates root growth, increases microbial colonisation. We reduce any inputs that retard root growth, i.e. excess in furrow synthetic fertilisers. We avoid the use of Group B herbicides. We have lowest possible plant populations to achieve the outcome we desire, and we maintain a soft crop pasture rotation where possible. Soluble calcium. A lot of people probably know most of this stuff, but these are the reasons we've been so focused on it. And the deficiencies, well, we don't want any of them: poor root growth, dieback, poor cell density, poor palatability, poor animal weight gain, and poor stress tolerance. And with the climate the way it is, the poor stress tolerance is probably more important than ever. So with our pastures, this is something that I'm quite excited about. The best part about a pasture is you can do something to it and get up in the morning and go and have a look at your sheep, and the sheep will tell you whether they like it or not. Whereas a crop, yeah, you've got your bricks meter or whatever else, but it doesn't talk to you. Whereas a sheep, we started playing around with this giant mist a few years, and it's probably one of my passions. I love it because every time you go to a different paddock, if you want to do something different, you can just chuck a different liquid in, or a bit more or a bit less. Whereas with a granule fertiliser, you know, it's in the shed, you tip it in the spreader, you spread it out. It's not nowhere near as much fun. So once again, yeah, we're applying soluble calcium along with trace elements to our pastures. So in the mister there, we've got selenium, cobalt. I've written it all down here because I never forget as soon as I start talking about it. Selenium, cobalt, copper, moly, kelp, magnesium, and soluble calcium. So, and we can run that at 60 metre swaths at 20 k's an hour for a total volume of 40 litres a hectare. So 700 hectares a day is easily achievable, which means we can get over some country. We started playing around with this sort of mix, I don't know, close to 10 years ago, on paddocks that didn't have a nice clover base. And my father, being the critic that most fathers are in farming families, we applied the product to the paddock that had a fairly big capeweed pasture, and I waited for the lambs to come in at weighing time to see his response, and he couldn't believe how good the lambs were considering the paddock they'd come off. So for me, that was a turning point, and we now it's standard operating procedure over most of the pastures on the farm. But to free up, to reduce your free nitrates when you do get rain and prevent scouring, it's just been a massive tool, because there's not much point growing good feed in the spring and having the animals shit it out the back. So very, very important to me, that part of it. So we've been using low rates of conventional pasture fertilisers, MAP and SOP at planting, combined with the Australian Soil Planners farming system now for 15 years on the home farm, and the home farm just continues to get better and better. My son's been home for 2 years now, and he probably didn't understand what was going on while he was young, but as he's spent a couple of years on the farm, even he has become quite understanding of the fact that the home farm seems to get the least love but performs the best. So with the MAP, we banned a liquid fertiliser in furrow, which includes soluble calcium, a root growth microbial stimulant, a nitrogen efficiency molecule, trace elements as needed based on historical plant sap analysis. We do in-crop foliar to improve cell division and cell density. We usually use no more than 11 units of synthetic N, and we keep ground cover. We lock sheep up, we do whatever it takes to maintain some level of ground cover. What do we not want to do? To help our soil do the things we've discussed today, we need to remove the following. Take group Bs out of the system, remove muriate of potash, remove urea, and reduce or eliminate cultivation. We're members of the ASP Farming Group. The network includes about 180 of us globally. We produce in excess of 10 million litres of liquid fertiliser throughout the country through farmer-owned liquid plants, and having such a diverse group in different areas of the world, we can share our knowledge, and we can do trials, on the other side of the planet that can then be related back to here. So we've got summer crops in the east, so we can get results pretty quick. We're pragmatic about what we're wanting to achieve, and we understand that there's nothing sustainable about losing money. We make mistakes, we learn, and we focus on having a better functioning system every year. I haven't finished yet, but this was going to be my last slide, but I have got a little bit more after this. So, in the low medium rainfall zone, I don't believe you'll see large gains in sequestered carbon. These are my opinions. We're not trying to increase carbon to sell or trade. We're trying to increase functional carbon to grow next year's crops, to increase soil health, water holding capacity, seasonal resilience, and less reliance on synthetic fertilisers to make a more profitable and reliable farming system. We love farming. So I was just going to, before we go to the next slide, so if I may digress a tiny little bit, I'm a current board member of a company called Southern Cross Ag Exports, which was set up by about 25, 30 farmers around Australia to produce a certification called ASP Certified, which stands for Australian Sustainable Produce. We have a client, our main client is Craig Neal from Whole Grain Milling, located in Gunnedah in New South Wales, and he produces 15,000 tonnes of flour from our eastern states farmers and sells mostly to the artisan baking market on the east coast. He's widely proclaimed as one of the best millers on the east coast, and his bakers love him. We also sell ASP certified grains to the stock feed industry. There's something we've mucked around with in the last 12 months with the virus and everything. We sent some of our barley over there that we'd made sure was met all the requirements of the certification, and the lady that's in charge developed good root beer. So not that we just love our soluble calcium and our roots, but we've got to look after our beer. So this project has been a bit of fun, and we've backed up some of the data with the University of Queensland, proving up that our system is got a much smaller carbon footprint than the standard, and we're making out. We're passionate about the fact that carbon neutral using carbon credits and band-aids is not the solution. We believe, do it from the ground up rather than just buying the credits. So if you love beer and good roots, and let's face it, who doesn't, we've crafted the perfect combination for you. Save the beer, planet one beer at a time. So this beer's already going into some breweries in the eastern states, and we're doing a home brew package. So this has been quite a bit of fun and something as a bit of a sidetrack. And I've got a young fellow in Goomelling that's setting up a malt house, and he's already done a trial with our barley, and I can't wait to get up there and taste it. But from all accounts, it's going to be fantastic. So thank you very much for your time, and sorry that I was very nervous, but yeah, cheers, Shay.
Because I just don't want something to be quiet.
Sorry, thanks very much, Brendon. Look, can I just say, you're fantastic, and it is, I absolutely agree with you that the water retention is the big story, you know, and that's why we love what we're seeing happening with the natural sequence farming, which is focusing on retaining that water in the land and then how you can do that regeneration. So no confusion about that. But just look, with the soil carbon and what we're trying to do with carbon credits, like what we saw in the southern rangelands, really, I mean, human-induced regeneration, which is fundamentally what David Pollock was doing in Wollongong, it was a worthwhile story in itself. It should happen with or without carbon credits. But it was the carbon credits that got, you know, now sort of around 60 pastoralists actually doing this stuff. It was that which, because they're like you know, you want the nice car and the nice school for your kids, and fundamentally it's all about the money, which is what you're saying. So the carbon credits have been an incredible way of driving reform. We saw that in the pastoral rangelands. Now what we're trying to say, there are farmers like you that are doing, that actually understand that building soil carbon is how you do good farming, and that's got to be the main motivation. But what we're trying to do is sort of like incentivise more people like you that don't like the philosophy, but want the dollars, and we're thinking if we can bring an extra financial incentive into that, that might be the thing that starts getting more people into this practice. I'd be interested in your comment on that.
No, I couldn't agree more. Like pastoral country, that sort of thing, that's the only avenue. I just like to make the point that as a farmer, I don't want to see people going out and buying carbon neutral food when it's not bloody carbon neutral.
Oh, no,
you
sorry,
know, like
can I just
as far as
yeah. I'm not talking about carbon offsets, and I agree with you. I think the whole carbon offsets thing is quite, you know, questionable. We're talking about actually building the soil carbon and then getting a benefit for having built the soil carbon. So it's not buying offsets elsewhere.
No, and look, I'll take part. I imagine most farmers are going to enjoy that. But where's the benchmark set? Is it set in 2020 or is it set in 2008? Or so we regenerate this project that had a benchmark in 2008. Is the government going to give me, or is someone going to give me money for any carbon I've produced, or is there a new benchmark going to be set in 2025 and then another one in 2030?
Well,
do you know
the
what I mean?
benchmark is where you are at the start of the project, so it's where you are, and the idea is to get pressure. Now, it is not the main thing that should be driving this change, right? It's not the main thing that should be driving the change, but we're trying to get that element of additionality that just, you know, helps get more people. We all know more people should be doing what you're doing. The question is, how do we get that happening?
No, I agree. Just my opinion is that it needs to be grassroots. Thank you.